Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining me for this special 2-hour exploration of the 4 core Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Today I invite you to settle in, perhaps grab a favorite drink or find a comfortable place to sit, because our journey through these timeless principles will be both expansive and deeply personal. Have you ever felt as though life's challenges arrive in waves, with barely enough time to catch your breath before another one comes crashing in? Maybe you've wondered if there's a steady guiding compass that could help you navigate each obstacle and remain calm under pressure. Stoicism, an ancient philosophy practiced by figures like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, presents us with exactly that: a set of guiding principles that remind us how to live with purpose, integrity, and emotional balance. And at the heart of this philosophy, we find 4 virtues that have stood the test of time: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Before we dive into the first virtue, let's talk about why this all matters. Right now, we live in an era filled with constant noise, social media feeds that don't stop, news headlines flashing updates every minute, and an avalanche of opinions and expectations pressing on us from every angle. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, distracted, and disconnected from our deeper values. The Stoics confronted their own kind of chaos in the ancient world, which, though slower paced by our standards, was no less rife with threats, uncertainties, and moral dilemmas. Yet these thinkers discovered that by centering themselves on certain unshakable ideals, they could respond to life's difficulties with composure, dignity, and resilience. This is precisely what we'll explore: how to cultivate a mindset capable of transforming fear into resolve, confusion into clarity, and impulsive urges into thoughtful restraint. Let's begin with wisdom. When we hear the word wisdom, it might evoke images of a scholar buried in dusty books or a sage perched on a mountain. But the Stoics approached wisdom in a highly pragmatic way. In their view, wisdom means seeing things as they truly are, understanding what is within your control and what lies outside it. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal, known as the Meditations, constantly reminded himself that the judgments we place on events cause us more pain than the events themselves. Wisdom is about having the clarity to discern the difference between the noise in our own heads, our anxieties, assumptions, and snap judgments, and the objective reality of the situation. By doing so, we can respond rationally instead of reacting emotionally. A practical application of this is daily reflection. You might set aside a few minutes each evening to review your day, asking, which events were truly within my control today, and which ones were not? Over time, you may discover that some of your biggest worries and frustrations stem from trying to micromanage things you simply cannot dictate, like other people's opinions, unexpected shifts in workplace policies, or even the weather. The power of wisdom lies in directing your energy toward what is truly yours to shape: your attitudes, decisions, and interpretations. To illustrate this, imagine having a conflict with a coworker who constantly criticizes your approach. You can't force them to like you or to see things your way, but you can examine how you respond, how you might learn from their feedback, or how you can calmly assert your perspective without letting their negativity derail your emotional stability. Such a shift in perspective fosters a sense of calm and control, rooted in genuine insight rather than a fantasy of total domination. Now, let's move on to courage. Often we associate courage with dramatic heroism, charging into battle, saving someone from a burning building, or taking a stand in the face of extreme danger. While these are certainly expressions of courage, the Stoics believed in a broader, more everyday notion of bravery. Courage is the willingness to act rightly, even when the stakes are high or when fear is whispering in your ear. Seneca wrote about how we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Too often, our fears loom larger in our minds than they do in the external world. Courage, then, becomes the practice of moving forward despite these fears, not because we have magically banished them. For a more ordinary modern example, consider the simple act of setting a boundary in a relationship. Maybe you have a friend who frequently oversteps, leaving you drained or uncomfortable. Confronting this friend candidly with kindness, but also firmness, requires courage. It's not on the same scale as running into a burning building, but it's a situation where your mind is saying, what if this ruins our friendship? Or what if they get angry with me? Acting anyway, in line with your true values, is an embodiment of courageous living. Another way to practice courage is through gradual exposure to what you fear, maybe public speaking, conflict resolution, or a bold career move. The important part is acknowledging the fear but choosing to do what aligns with virtue and long-term well-being. Courage does not demand the absence of fear. Instead, it gently insists that our values and sense of moral clarity are more compelling than our worry about discomfort or failure. The third virtue, justice, ties everything together in our relationships with others and the broader community. It's often tempting to think of justice purely in legal terms, courtrooms, laws, and rulings. For the Stoics, however, justice is fundamentally about how we treat other people. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that we humans are made for each other. We share a world, a city of humankind. Therefore, to live virtuously is to remember that your actions have consequences not just for you, but for everyone around you. The extension of that principle is empathy and fairness, asking whether we're treating others in a way we would find honorable if we were on the receiving end. In day-to-day life, justice manifests in small acts that might seem insignificant at first. Perhaps it means taking the time to listen when someone speaks, genuinely trying to understand their perspective. It could mean sharing credit for a team success at work or refusing to gossip about a mutual friend. On a more challenging scale, justice can demand speaking up when you witness unfairness or discrimination, knowing you risk criticism or pushback for doing so. Stoics like Cato the Younger risked political exile for standing up to what he saw as the corruption of his era. Such an example underscores that justice, while it sounds noble, can cost us in terms of comfort and safety. Yet a just society, whether it's a small circle of friends or an entire nation, depends on individuals who are willing to act with moral conviction. In practicing justice, we realize that our actions reverberate beyond our own personal sphere. The final Stoic virtue, temperance, reminds us that life's pleasures are not evil in themselves, but the unrestrained pursuit of them can quietly erode our character and freedom. Temperance is about moderation and self-control. Picture it as a balancing scale. On one side, we have instant gratification, maybe scrolling endlessly through social media, overeating, or indulging a bad habit that feels good in the moment. On the other side, we have long-term well-being, health, financial stability, and self-respect. Practicing temperance means having the discipline to choose actions aligned with your true best interests, rather than being governed by momentary impulses. This could take the shape of setting limits on how much time you spend on your phone or social media, or deciding to adopt a healthier diet and sticking to it. Epictetus famously asserted that freedom is found not in the fulfillment of every whim, but in the mastery of our desires, so they don't control us. A simple way to start is to identify one area in your life where you feel a bit out of balance. Maybe it's staying up too late watching YouTube videos, or it's spending beyond your means because you can't resist online shopping. Then, create a small boundary. Maybe limit screen time to a certain hour, or track your expenses for a week. Notice what happens as you rein in your impulses. Does your mind resist? Do you feel strangely empowered? This self-awareness is the seed of temperance, slowly growing as you learn to say no when necessary and yes, only when it aligns with your deeper values. Now that we've introduced the four virtues, let's reflect on how they fit together. Stoicism teaches that these principles are interconnected, supporting and reinforcing each other. Wisdom illuminates what is worth pursuing and what is not. Courage lends you the willpower to act on that insight despite resistance. Justice ensures your actions are fair and altruistic, not selfish. And temperance keeps your desires from overshadowing your better judgment. When you see these four virtues operating in harmony, you unlock a powerful inner resource for dealing with life's complexities. Many of us have encountered moments when we had the clarity of wisdom but lacked the nerve to follow through. Or we found the courage to act, but weren't mindful of the impact on others, letting justice slip. Perhaps we tried to behave justly, but got swept up in a tide of temptation, losing sight of temperance. Recognizing how these virtues depend on each other encourages a more holistic approach to personal growth. At this point in our 2-hour journey, I want to offer you a moment to ask yourself which virtue resonates most with your current struggles. Is it wisdom? Learning to distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot? Or maybe courage, finding the guts to confront something you've been avoiding? Could it be justice, taking a stand or showing empathy in a situation where you're tempted to stay silent? Or temperance, balancing your impulses with mindful restraint? Take a brief pause, perhaps even jot down a few thoughts if you have a notebook handy, and see which virtue feels most relevant to your present life. This act of naming your focus can be a first step toward real, practical change. You might be wondering how to sustain this philosophy in everyday life beyond just watching a video. One time-tested Stoic practice is journaling. Spend 5 to 10 minutes each evening to check in with yourself. Did you practice wisdom today? Or did you get swept away by things out of your control? Did you find opportunities for courage? Or did you shy away from them? Were you fair and empathetic toward others, even when it was inconvenient? Did you exercise self-control? Or did you let a short-term indulgence sabotage a bigger goal? By asking these questions, you make Stoicism a living dialogue within your own mind, rather than a dusty concept on the shelf. In terms of structured exercises, you might enjoy what modern thinkers call fear setting, a technique that has its roots in Stoic perspectives. Instead of just setting goals, write down your greatest fears regarding a specific action or situation. Identify what the worst-case scenario might look like, how you would cope if that worst case did occur, and what steps you could take to mitigate any harm. Often, the sheer act of detailing a fear reveals that it's more manageable than you initially thought, and you may find the courage to move forward. Another exercise might be a digital detox, where, for an allotted time, you unplug from social media or unnecessary phone usage. Observe how that affects your sense of peace and whether you're more present in conversations or more productive in your tasks. Doing this not only helps you cultivate temperance, but can also reinforce wisdom by reminding you that so much online chatter lies beyond your control. Let's open a space in this narrative for hypothetical viewer questions, as a way to deepen our reflection. One question someone might raise is, if I become too focused on controlling what I can and can't influence, won't I end up isolating myself from the world's problems, turning cold or indifferent? The Stoic answer is that acknowledging your limits doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you act fully where your influence actually counts. In fact, many Stoics actively contributed to society. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, and Epictetus taught his ideas publicly. They didn't hide away. They simply refused to let external chaos unravel their internal calm. Another common question might be, doesn't discipline or temperance make life dull? Where's the fun? The Stoics would argue that true joy comes not from overindulgence, but from the peace of mind that arises when you have a healthy relationship to pleasure. Imagine savoring a delightful meal without guilt, or the urge to overeat, or enjoying social media without falling into endless comparison traps. Temperance doesn't eliminate pleasure. It refines and heightens it, turning it into something you control rather than something that controls you. As we move deeper into our time together, consider how you might apply all 4 virtues in a scenario that has been troubling you. Perhaps it's a career decision, switching jobs, pursuing a new project, or taking a leap into entrepreneurship. Using wisdom, you would do research, weigh pros and cons, and reflect on whether this decision aligns with your bigger life purpose. Courage would then help you overcome the fear of failure or judgment, allowing you to act decisively. Justice would remind you to consider how your choice affects others. your family, your colleagues, or even future customers, urging you to conduct your affairs ethically. And temperance would encourage balanced progress, so you don't burn out from overwork or become so fixated on success that you neglect your personal well-being. In this way, the four virtues operate as a holistic matrix, guiding each element of the decision-making process towards something that is good for both you and those around you. You might also appreciate some historical anecdotes that bring these virtues to life. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He was arguably the most powerful man in the world at the time, ruling as Roman emperor, and yet he filled his private journals with reminders not to let the grandeur of his position make him arrogant or unkind. He would write things like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," indicating that his real aim was self-mastery, not the pomp of empire. This profound humility and focus on controlling only what he could, the internal realm, illustrates wisdom. Cato the Younger, another Stoic figure, is famous for his unwavering commitment to Roman Republican values, even though it led to tremendous personal risk and, eventually, his downfall. His willingness to speak truth to power, even when it endangered his status and life, exemplifies courage. Meanwhile, Seneca's extensive letters on ethics and daily conduct delve into how to practice justice and temperance in relationships, finances, and personal habits, showing how to tie these virtues into the fabric of normal life. In the time we have remaining, let's reflect on practical ways to keep these virtues alive. One suggestion is to form or join a community, be it a local group, an online forum, or a regular meetup that discusses Stoic ideas and shares personal experiences. When you have a circle of like-minded people who also strive to live by wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, it becomes easier to hold yourself accountable and learn from others' insights. Another approach is to schedule virtue check-ins, maybe weekly or monthly, where you rate yourself on each of the four virtues and identify areas for improvement. This might sound methodical, but it can reveal patterns and prevent complacency. If you notice you've been avoiding a difficult conversation at work, that's a sign to work on courage. If you catch yourself staying silent in the face of gossip or unfair treatment of a colleague, that's a justice issue. If your evenings have been consumed by mindless binges on streaming services, that's a moment to reevaluate temperance. And if you're prone to catastrophizing about global events you have no direct power to influence, that's a call to revisit wisdom. As our 2-hour journey nears its conclusion, I want to emphasize that living by these virtues doesn't require superhuman willpower or a monastic lifestyle. On the contrary, it's a continuous dance of self-awareness, reflection, and choice. It's understanding that real freedom emerges when you align your actions with your highest values, rather than being tossed around by every passing whim or external pressure. Each day you have countless chances to exercise these virtues, in small interactions, personal decisions, conversations with friends, and the ways you engage with the world at large. Even if you stumble, which we all do, you can learn and come back to the core principles again and again. Thank you for dedicating this time to delve so deeply into the 4 core Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. I encourage you, even if you only take one actionable insight from this entire exploration, to integrate it into your life starting now. Maybe that's committing to a brief journaling practice. Maybe it's finally having that hard conversation you've been putting off. Maybe it's cutting back on some habit that doesn't align with who you want to be. Whatever it is, embrace it wholeheartedly. And if you found this exploration valuable, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from a Stoic perspective. Leave a comment or question if something resonated with you or sparked a new insight. The power of this philosophy isn't locked in the ancient world. It's alive and accessible in each decision you make. Let us all aim to be a little wiser, a little braver, a little fairer, and a bit more disciplined, day by day. By doing so, we not only improve ourselves, but also contribute to a kinder, more thoughtful community. one built on principles that echo across centuries, guiding us toward the best versions of ourselves.